We are live. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. Hey, what's up, Leslie?
Hey, how's it going?
It is good. Everyone, thanks for joining us on our third episode of CHATS. My name is Arvin.
And I'm Leslie. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, everybody. So just a preface, CHATS, this is our third episode. We want to evolve the platform into a live conversation where we bring on interesting parents with ideas that they'd like to express, ideas where we intersect, agree, disagree. And as the audience, please funnel in your questions as you hear us have our conversation with Drew Tupper, our guest for today. Drew has cultivated a online community called Calm and Conscious Dads, and is also a parent coach, and has a broad wisdom for just the well-adjusted home, working on the self, mindfulness, self-control, a whole gamut of things. So we'll dive right into it.
All right. So before we introduce Drew, if anybody's watching today, and if you have a question for Drew, feel free to drop a line, make a shout out, ask any questions for Drew that you have on parenting. We have a live chat below. We'd love to hear from you. And without further ado, hey, Drew.
Hello.
Hey, Drew.
Hello, Leslie. Hi, Arvin.
Hello. Thanks for carving out the time. We know your time is valuable. Yes.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And remind us again where, or if we can let everybody who's watching know, where are you right now?
Yeah.
Where do you live?
I live in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada.
Nice. It must be beautiful over there.
It is beautiful. It's on Vancouver Island, which is off the coast, just north of Seattle. And it is beautiful. It is lovely. It's the Hawaii of Canada.
Nice. I gotta visit that sometime.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Drew, I'm not exactly sure how the universe connected us. Somehow, I don't know, Facebook knew that we might be interested in some of the same things. So we're friends on Facebook, but got sucked into your community and a lot of your content, your parent coaching content. Can you share with the audience the chronology, your background, where you come from, and how you've evolved?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I came to parent coaching through the direct experience. Like, I was in it. I was in the struggle. I had my son with the hopes of being a great dad and a great parent. And I had such high hopes for myself and the whole situation. And, the first couple of years weren't so bad because babies, they're challenging, right? For sure. And there's lack of sleep, and there's trying to figure out the needs of the child, and there's crying. And I'm not going to say it wasn't difficult, but for me, my difficulty came more around like 2 or 3 when my son started developing, his own
personality.
Yeah. Strong will, personality. And that's when we started to clash. And that's when I recognized that I was not really being the dad that I wanted to be. And so it took me a few years, but I studied hard and I learned, and I did coaching and counseling. I took workshops and I went to retreats, and I really dove into parenting because I was like, this is important. This is really, really important. The stakes are high here. My child's development is on the line. And his future is going to be determined in large part by what I do in these first few years, 0 to 6. So I got down to business. And it took me a few years, to be honest, to get to a point of where I was leading by example, where I was parenting more in the way that I really wanted to.
Can we, the point at which, I guess, your moment of truth, when your child started developing these preferences and it became challenging, and you had this definition of the father that you thought you would be, or the idea or of the ideal you, and what you were presenting. And there's a discontinuity there. And how did you, first of all, how did you identify or define what the good Drew dad was?
Yeah.
You know?
I think that it was some vague ideas really in the beginning, not well defined, not that well intentioned. I think I had some vague ideas that were a hangover from, or lingered from my own childhood, in which, circled around in my head ideas like, well, a good parent is able to get his or her children to listen to him or her. That's a good parent. Is able to teach and the child will listen. Obviously provide a healthy environment and to, feed them healthy foods and like get the appropriate amount of sleep. But the one area where I think tripped me up was that area of like, I'm the authority, I'm in control, and a good parent is able to have obedient kids. And that reality did not materialize. I did not have an obedient child.
So there was a result that was undesirable, and then you educated yourself. You decided, what I'm doing is wrong. I need to do something else. How did you curate that new knowledge and incorporate it?
Well, first of all, you mentioned some like moments of truth that led me to know that I was not doing what I wanted to do. And there was a moment like where I was trying to get my son to get changed or something. And he was young, 2 or 3. And I was like being quite rough with him. And I was on top of him and I was like basically wrestling him and like pinning him down to his bed. And because I wanted him to do what I wanted him to do.
Yeah. Physical coercion.
Physical coercion. And he ended up saying, Dad, you're hurting me.
Yeah.
And it was a moment of like, oh, like, and he said it in a way that was just like, he was hurting and like this cute young little voice. And I just, I was being really rough with him. And so in that moment, and there were several other moments like that, where there was a moment of truth, and I'm like, this is not the guy that I want to be. Is there not a better way than this? Can I not raise my kids respectfully? And I honestly didn't know if I could. I thought there had, somewhere in my mind, I thought there had to be a level of fear, negativity, and shame to the lessons that I was teaching. Like, you got to be scared of me. I need to have fingertip control over you. And I didn't actually know. I didn't know that I could do it in any other way. So I doubted it and I questioned it. And maybe I even laughed at other people that thought that they could do it. No, your kid's going to end up being, I don't know, disobedient and reckless, and you don't know what you're doing. So I had to overcome a lot of pre-existing notions and beliefs and take a leap of faith that this could be done differently.
Yeah.
So what was the turning point for you when you realized you needed to change, and what made you change? Was it something that somebody said when you attended any of the coaching classes? Was it a certain situation?
Yeah, thanks. Well, my evolution was gradual. This did not happen overnight for sure. And there was a lot of these little moments built on top of one another where I was thinking like, darn, I do not want to, this is not ideal. There's a feeling inside of me. I started listening to myself and listening to my body, almost like my body was rejecting this kind of parenting. And year after year, it took years, unfortunately. I'm embarrassed to say it took years for me to emerge out of this aggressive, power over, authoritarian style of parenting. And so little by little, it happened. I take a parenting course. oh, that makes sense. That makes more sense. I'd read a book. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I talked to a friend. We talked about this. I go to see a counselor, parent coach. Oh, okay, yeah. And so little by little, I pieced together a better way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. There's a key word there. You mentioned things that you have learned, and that was a part of your toolkit that was not working. Is that in reference to your own upbringing with your folks and how they maintained their power and control?
Sure. Like, I always thought that I was raised in a good environment, and I think actually comparatively I was. And so I do consider myself to be fortunate. However, this is a person coming out of, like, I'm well educated. I come from a good, safe place with parents who cared. Yet, like, I still express myself aggressively and angrily, like, so
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? Like, so you're right, Arvin, like, what is going on? Where's that energy coming from? Where's that kind of anger and those reactive emotions coming from? And sure, yeah, I mean, it has to be. I had to learn it somewhere.
So you have calm and conscious dads.
Yeah.
What is the story behind calm and conscious? I mean, does that have to do with this, being calm, obviously not having that anger? I want to learn more about that.
Yeah. Well, it's not very sexy or exciting, like calm, and even conscious is a little bit vague, right? So let me explain. Because parenting can be so charged full of emotions, and because kids can poke your buttons, and because there's so many things to do, that calm really is the place from which we can parent the best. That's when the executive functioning part of your brain, like the prefrontal lobes, is online and able to function the best, is when a person is self-regulated.
Yes.
So that's when we make our best decisions, and when we plan the best, and when we communicate the best. And if that's not happening, if you're somewhere else in your brain, if you're unregulated, if you're in the emotional center, or you've fallen all the way back into the survival part of your brain, like the reptilian place, your behavior as a parent is not going to be helpful. In fact, it's likely to be hurtful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Last night I had an episode with my son Elijah, right? So it was a completely reactionary episode where he punched me in the crotch, and it was like really painful. And I snapped. I snapped. It was like this physical hurt that I transferred back to him.
Yeah, sure.
And then it was not a good thing. And I had to apologize because of that, because it was just completely reactionary. And I'm not a psychologist, but I have read that you do lose IQ points when you're angry.
Yeah.
So can we talk about that a little bit more? Being physical, like not only parents being physical with kids, but kids being physical with parents. Like last week, that kind of happened to me too. Is my son, he wanted to watch another episode of his favorite show, and he was upset about it, and he kicked the wall, and another time he kicked me. How do you deal with that as a parent?
Well, how did you react, first of all, Leslie?
I tried to remember to be calm and took a deep breath. But inside of me, I just wanted to be like, don't do that.
Yeah. So a lot of transitioning from a traditional way of parenting to a calmer and more conscious way of parenting is going to be letting go of some things. And one of the things I had to let go of was this notion that my kid's getting away with something. Or I can't let him get away with that. It's a very punitive, old school way of thinking, if you think about it.
Yeah. Speaking of old school, Drew, we have a question from Sandra Goldman.
Sure.
Talking about the old school system.
Oh,
not having a voice when you were a kid. And the direct question is, what would you do differently from your parents?
right. Well, we could probably bundle that together with Leslie's question, which is like, when a child, or when a child, when I was young, any other child has a behavior, a big behavior, whether it's hitting or yelling, that means they're trying to communicate something.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the language. I didn't have the language when I was young to be like, excuse me, mom and dad, I'm feeling quite frustrated about the fact that although I have a preference for this, it seems like your preference as the adult is taking precedence right now. And you know what, mother?
Prioritize, Mom.
Right, exactly.
And you know what, mother? I think you're being a little bit hypocritical in your application of your parenting. That is not going to happen. There's going to be kicking the wall, or maybe sometimes hitting the parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I wished my parents would have done differently, like in that situation, and what I'm trying to do is to understand the cognitive limitations of the child and assume the best. Hey, this kid's trying to communicate something. And if I can understand what the child's trying to communicate, that's going to really just bring everything way down. It's going to chill everything out, and I'm going to be able to help that child. That child will not be able to listen to me, in fact, until I help him or her calm down. So when I was young, if I were to hit one of my parents, I probably would have been hit back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So to answer the question from the audience,
Mm-hmm.
I wish my parents would have said, "Hey, listen, man, what's going on? Like, can I help you?" And they would have been regulated, and then they would have taught me, "Listen, okay, so you want to do this? That makes sense to me. I get it. I don't like being hit. If you want my attention next time, tap me on the shoulder and say, 'Hey, Dad, I have a question for you.'" And so instead of punishing and reacting, what I would have preferred, and what I would suggest Leslie do as well, is to teach.
Okay.
I don't like that. Here's my boundary. I don't like that. Here's what you can do instead.
Right. Instead of harping on what not to do, what should you do?
Give the child a positive instruction. It may not work the first time. It may not work the second time. Be patient. It will work. And especially it's going to work if you also throw in that listening. Like, hey, what's going on? Can I help you? I'm on your side. We're on the same team here.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the child doesn't get what he wants, if he feels listened to and heard, there's going to be a much higher chance that you have more influence.
So anecdotally, at the breakfast table today, I was sitting with Elijah and Alice, and I was giving Alice attention, and I noticed Elijah was doing this grunting sound. He was trying to get my attention, like and I paused, and it's kind of synonymous with your approach, where I ask him to slow down, take a deep breath, so to first regulate, psychosomatically, right? And then I noticed that you're doing this sound. What does that mean? Because I don't know what that means, and so I put the onus on him to define what he's trying to communicate. And then he told me, "Daddy, I'm frustrated because you're not listening to me, and I'm trying to get your attention." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what that means, but you can say something like, 'Excuse me, Daddy.'" Or you can use your words. I try not to say use your words, but I do use that. We can talk about that later. But and it did click with him.
So, I like that idea. You're giving positive instruction, and if you can even give a specific instruction, like say, "Excuse me, Dad," because use your words is a bit vague.
Yeah.
I don't know how old your child is, but
he's 4.
So I would definitely give say this.
The example.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Yeah.
sure, you can ask a child, what do you think you could do? What do you think you could say? And if they're not there yet, help them out. Give them something to say.
Yeah. Can we talk punishment?
Sure.
Because you said punishment and teaching, and that
Right.
was a little bit of a. It was surprising. It was like a very broad statement. You know, when we were pre-gaming before the episode, you mentioned
Right.
I don't like to punish. I like to instruct.
Right.
And is that? I wondered, is that an absolute statement, or can you help us wrap our heads around that broad statement?
Sure.
Yeah.
It is an absolute statement. It is a belief of mine, but it's also a practice. I'm not saying that I've never punished, because we all know where I came from and what I used to be like. So having said that, it's been a number of years, I don't know, 6, 7 years where I have not punished. And I'd almost like people to meet my kids. I want to do a show where I bring my kids on and go, okay, well, you know, because some parents say to me, well, what's going to happen? How do you know it's going to work? Aren't you worried that, like, without any structure or discipline, which is another code word for punishment, that your kids are going to be unruly members of society? And I have to admit that I was worried about that too, which is why I mentioned it was a leap of faith for me to let go the authoritarian style. So I'd almost like people to meet my kids and go, look, like, they're polite, they're intelligent, they do well in school. What else? They're respectful, well-spoken, right? Like, so it can be done. And so what was the question? Is it a universal thing? Yeah, it's a universal thing, because I've lived it, and I've found different ways to teach my kids other than with coercion and fear and shame.
Right. So does for punishment, is timeout in that same category? What are your thoughts on timeout?
Generally speaking, I say yes. Because the way most timeouts are being used is as a punishment. It's used mostly in a way, as far as I know, I don't like what you're doing. You know, you're bothering me, or you've broken one of my rules. So you need to go over there and be isolated from me. Yeah, you're not allowed to be near me. You have to sit here, and I'm going to limit your movement and isolate you. That's a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about reframing that, Drew, as like, you can have your space, you can go there, have your space, and think, and when you're ready, come back. Which is because we did time out, and then it felt net negative to us, and then we started to do it as like space. We reframed it.
Yeah.
So I've found nothing better. So this is, I mean, maybe I'd consider timeout if I heard that it was amazing and people were having tons of success with it. But I've not heard that. And then secondly, I have not had any better success in my parenting than me being self-regulated, helping my kids self-regulate, and then working through something and teaching them. So let's say you're my kids. I help you calm down. I don't react to a behavior, even though if it's an unwanted behavior, I don't react to it. I regulate myself. I help you regulate, and I help you understand what you wanted, what you tried to do, the impact of what you tried to do. Like, was that, like, did that work? Does that feel good? What could you do instead? And kids as young as 3 can do this. And I've done this. And so in terms of modifying behavior, which is what punishment I think is originally meant to do, the way that I'm doing it, I have seen it's more effective, it's more sustainable, it's certainly more enjoyable. Right. So as far as a timeout goes, I've taken space from my kids because I'm like, listen, I can't handle it. I gotta go. I need space. I have to go relax and breathe. And
So what do you do if they're not listening? You know, you feel like you're repeating yourself multiple times. I
yeah.
think, you know, that I think with timeout, there's a lot of conflicting ideas, but I think people at that point resort to timeout. Like, what do you do instead?
Well, again, you got to ask yourself what kind of home you're trying to create. And a lot of the reactions that come about when a kid isn't listening they are because it's a threat to the parent or the parent's ego. Right? He's not listening. My kid's not listening. And so I got to do something. There's a story in my head. I got to do something. My kid's not listening. And that can get a parent worked up. And they can get worked up to the point of where they want to now punish and control and have some semblance of like control. Because when a kid doesn't listen, and I can speak for myself here, the feeling that I used to have was, oh man, like there's this little kid not listening to me. That I feel ignored. I feel like I don't matter. This feels disrespectful. And so I start telling a story, kind of a negative story, about what this child is trying to do to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to slow down and imagine, okay, if that's the story I'm telling myself, I'm almost surely to punish because like I've got to regain control. Now, what if I shift the perspective and instead of judging and blaming and getting angry, I get a little bit curious. What's going on here? I'm speaking, and here's this kid 10 feet away, and they're just keep on playing with the Lego.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? Is he trying to tell me this? Is he trying to send me a message that he thinks I'm weak and he's trying to disrespect me and he thinks I'm worthless? Because I'm kind of getting that feeling right now. Okay, wait a second. No. My 2-year-old's not doing that. That's in my own head.
Projection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening right now? What's actually happening? Well, I guess he's into the Lego. I guess he's pretty focused. And here's so then we can work with that, right? So okay, I get what's really happening here. I'm going to get closer to the kid. I'm going to make eye contact with the child. I'm going to use the child's name. And I might even connect with the child before I try and direct him. Hey, Billy, what's going on? Looks like you're building a Lego tower. And Billy's like, yeah, man, it's awesome. It's blue, and it's like I got this extra thing I'm gonna put on top, and there's this. And you're like, yeah, I see that. Yeah, and then what else are you gonna build? Oh, I'm gonna build this car, and just go around here, and it's gonna do this thing, and then you say, yeah, and so you're in dialogue. Now you're in communication. Now he's got your attention, and vice versa.
Right. You're talking about something that's very interesting to the kid. They're going to be engaged.
Yeah. From that place, you can say, hey, listen, it's lunchtime now. Join me at the table for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And much higher likelihood in that scenario from like calling across the room, much higher likelihood connecting and using the name and getting close and making eye contact. So it's a skill set the parent can develop. And you got to watch out for this, is training your kids not to listen to you.
Okay.
Now imagine inadvertently making that mistake, right?
Yeah.
What if you're in the kitchen and you're like, Billy, time for lunch, and you're not connecting. It's just kind of that you're just throwing it out into the house, and he's not listening because he's busy doing his thing. He's focused. And then boom, boom, boom. You say it 3 or 4 times. Finally, you're like, it's time for lunch. And then he gets up and he moves. So you're essentially training him. I don't have to listen to her until she yells.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Oh, this is a good question from Jan on Facebook. How do you encourage other caretakers like grandparents to take a similar approach for consistency? And I know we deal with that too, because we have our parents, both sides of the parents actually watching. So not only do you have like what the parents are doing, but you have one set of grandparents and then you have another set of grandparents. So that's
that's a great question. We had some challenges in my family with regard to some of the opinions and views that the grandparents shared about what we were doing. And this is when I was trying to transition from the authoritarian to a bit more calm and conscious, right? And the message was, you're not doing a great job here. We're kind of worried about this. There's not enough discipline here. And I really got worried about that. And I thought that I was failing because here's these people that know a lot about parenting telling me we're not doing the right thing. And that was super hard. And basically the long and the short of it was that I had to find my own strength. And I had to realize that this is our family. This is our turn to be parents. We might be doing something different here, but I had to stand for it. And I had to communicate in an assertive way, loving but assertive. This is what we're doing now. This is what I'm trying. This is our idea. And I had to give instructions.
How did you do that in a way that was amicable?
Not defensive.
Well, basically the idea is like to connect with them and understand their perspective. Like, hey, I get what you want. You want the best for your grandkids. And you've been a parent, you got lots of experience, and I'm really hoping to learn from you. And we appreciate you and all that you've done. And I'm sure that like you wanted to parent the way that you wanted to, and you wouldn't have wanted, your parents coming in and telling you exactly what to do. We'd like to have our turn. We'd like to have a chance. We want to. This is exciting for us, and we might have some different ideas than you, but it doesn't mean that we think that you did a bad job, and we don't trust you. It's just that we're charting our own course now. We'd love for you to listen and to learn with us and to get on board with what we're doing. That's the kind of approach that I used.
It's beautiful. It's respectful. It pays homage and respect. It acknowledges their efforts.
Yeah.
It does not belittle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's hard. It's really hard because if you're trying to change something that's like based in your family or your culture, man, that's a tough thing to do. But so you got to believe in it. And I believed in it. And I said, listen, this is too important. This is way too important. There's nothing else in this world. I don't even, not my parents, not where I came from, not my society, nothing that is more important than my kids. So that gave me the strength to, in a way, politely lay down the law.
I like that. Yeah, because I feel like, with I have Filipino culture, with our backgrounds, a huge part of it is respect for elders. And it's very hard sometimes to voice what you want for your kids versus what they want to do, because they are watching them a majority of the time.
That's a different ball of wax too, because that was not my situation. I was with my kids most of the time. And so if you have extended family taking care of kids, that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big one. I mean, they're oftentimes doing it for free.
Yes.
Leslie. I have a lot of,
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the way of life. The older generation help comes and helps out, and what they've done worked for us.
Yes.
So it's got to work for, they know.
Yeah. And I mean, we are so blessed, and we so appreciate what our grandparents, or what the grandparents have done for our kids, because they've taught them so many things that you can't get sometimes in a care, like a
Right.
day school setting. So we love it. We love that they get to spend time with their grandparents. And, you just never know, especially around this time, how much time you have with your loved ones.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act to pay homage, to honor, and to love, and to appreciate, and at the same time to have expectations or agreements that, like, say for example, this might be something. We're not hitting our kids. We don't want anyone to hit our kids. And that could be tough for some people who are making that transition, because it might not be appreciated by an older generation.
Or seem weak.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is science
Yeah.
to back it up. There is a lot of science and research, and overwhelming number of psychologists recommend no physical discipline, and that's the beginning of it. I mean, I'm in a place where, like, I don't see the need for coercion, manipulation, shaming, and blaming. I don't think just because you get rid of physical punishment that you would be like a peaceful or a gentle parent. There's a lot of damage one can do, and I know by leveraging and manipulating and scaring a developing child.
Yeah.
Do you see a change over the years and decades of punishment? And, for example, my dad shares stories of when he was a child, his dad, and again, going back to the Filipino culture, they're very much into spanking.
Yeah.
And one situation that my dad had with that was he had firecrackers literally in his pocket. And my grandpa got the belt and didn't know the firecrackers were there.
Oh my gosh.
And there was fireworks in his pants, literally.
Oh, man.
So since then, my dad, he shared with us that that's one of the reasons why he decided not to do that to us. And it changed his mindset of how he was going to raise us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that different cultures around the world have norms about behavior. And it's interesting how, and I lived in Grenada for a couple of years, and it seemed this is the case there, that physical punishment is more common and accepted and even claimed by the culture as like, well, this is what we do. This is our thing. And it's not really one culture's thing. If you start looking around, it's actually widespread, even in parts of the States and Canada. You'll still find that. And I think it's about education. It's about effectiveness. And whenever I meet somebody who's punishing their kids physically and hurting them physically, I try not to come at it from a judgmental angle. It's like, if you're resorting to that, if that's what you have to do, I don't know. I think you're in a tough spot. I think you're probably struggling. Yeah. So I try and come at it with gentleness and acceptance, and I try to relate to people. Like, I've been there. I know what that's like. And there's a different way if you're interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the physical. Can we touch on leverage? Because in the past with the kids, we use leverage, and maybe you can help us get aligned on your definition of leverage. But my definition is using a consequence to get a desired outcome or behavior from your kids that's non-physical. So, for example, they do something negative. I take away a toy, put it on the fireplace mantle.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times, the leverage or the punishment was not analogous to the offense.
Right. It's
and
just
so that
yeah.
And so my wife was like, what does that have to do with any? Why are you taking away Transformer if he's not going to eat his dinner? Like, how is that any sort of a teaching moment? And I was like, well, yeah, it's just, it doesn't actually. And after a while, the leverage lost its effect. They became immune to it. It's like, okay, well, I'm so used to getting my Transformer taken away.
Yeah, that happens. And again, just as with timeouts, I'm not hearing that this is super effective. I hear parents say to me, just like you said, Arvind, I have to take away more and more things and bigger things, and eventually my kids stop caring.
Yeah.
So it's like punishments don't actually govern behavior. What governs behavior is relationships, right?
Yes.
Just because there's a rule doesn't mean anyone's going to do it. Everyone knows that, who drives down the road and who speeds. Just because you have a rule doesn't mean you're going to follow it. You know, connection governs cooperation, which is something that comes from something I studied called conscious discipline with Dr. Becky Bailey. And that's true. Relationship capital. If you think about someone who has influence in your life, even a leader or a boss of yours, or you look back in your life, the person that had the most influence or you'd go the extra mile for, did you have a good relationship with them? Did they care about you? Did they understand you? Were they invested in you? It's like, yeah, that's who I listened to. That's who I respected. And here's the unfortunate thing with leverage. Eventually it loses its power. So then all you're left with is a strained relationship and no leverage.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody who's kind of angry with you for power tripping all these years.
Yeah.
And
you get known for that.
Yeah. And another byproduct of that is a child who now has learned how to leverage because you've been modeling it for years. And so now they are really good at it, and they will twist and turn and leverage you like you would not believe because they've been learning it since they've been 2, and they will be leverage ninjas. They will be.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how many preteen parents are just struggling because it's like this kid is super intelligent and they've got me from this angle and that angle, and I don't know how to deal with them. And they're smart, and they can manipulate, and they can coerce because they've learned it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You modeled it.
Yeah.
I would say, so anecdotally, my mentor, my design teacher, she obviously never spanked me, but the relationship that we had and the expectations that we set, it was always a cooperative relationship, and there was so much connection there that when she once told me she was disappointed, I had to go to the bathroom and cry. Like it was it was so meaningful,
Yeah.
But she didn't leverage. She just she didn't even say she was disappointed. She just had a disappointed look.
Yeah. Teaching kids about themselves and others, teaching them about empathy, actually is enough. And you'll have people say, that's not enough. You need to have punishment and harsh and consequences. And that hippie stuff about teaching empathy, it's not going to work. Well, it's not going to work if you don't trust in it and you don't actually try it and you don't do it consistently. But a relationship is a really powerful thing. And if you have trust, if you have mutual respect, if you lead by example, you can really help. You can teach a child, you can instruct a child, you can guide a child from that place, and they will listen. I know it sounds wild, but it's true.
It's a lot about trust. may I take a moment to step back for all three of us?
Mhm.
I want to open it up to Leslie, myself, and even you, Drew. Like, what between the three of us, what are some struggles right now? I know what mine are, and that's we can go down that thread. But Leslie, is there anything you're struggling with right now in terms of parenting, or your household?
Well, one of the things that I actually wanted to ask Drew and had in mind was my upcoming situation that maybe other parents might be having too is school, right?
Yeah.
So we've decided that we will be not homeschooling, but distance learning with our school district for my son. So one of the questions I have for what I'm asking myself is, how
Mhm.
will I be transitioning from the parent role to the teacher role and in between? And how is my son going to react to that?
So you're doing home learning come the fall?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a whole big ball of wax.
I mean, this is like a whole new situation. And I feel like other parents might be going through the same thing too, is
Yeah. It's
trying to
What?
figure that
Yeah.
out.
so
What
is
did Jason say? He said you're assigned. You're now going to be a
Like,
KP teacher.
oh yeah. He said, welcome to pre-K because I'm pretty much going to be
so
in
you're
pre-K, teaching pre-K
at your home
at our home
just with your son?
with my son. Yes. I mean,
Okay.
because, they give the choice, like here in Texas, they've given the choice for our school district to either do in person at school or distance learning
Mhm.
for a period of 9 weeks. And then you can make a decision whether to switch.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it is in your areas, but we decided just because of what's going on and, we want to reduce the risk of exposing any of our loved ones to keep him home
Mhm.
and for me to be with him and help him during the distance learning, because obviously he's 4 years old right now. He's not going to know how to turn on the computer and
Mhm.
get everything and do all the activities. And honestly, I'm not sure what it's going to entail. I mean, that's what we're still learning at the same time too.
Do you have any training in being a teacher?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
So that would be, I would acknowledge that. Like, there's a lot of parents that were a little bit disappointed in themselves for not being able to, to do this work. And being a teacher is actually, there's a lot of moving parts. It's a complex. It's a skill. It's a tough job. And so acknowledging that, like, you're not trained in that, and you don't have experience in that. And so coming to it with that kind of humility would make sense to me, and being open to reevaluating and as you go. But advice to you from that perspective would be, I could go on about this, but what I want to drive home is, like, keep it reasonable, keep it achievable. Like, don't heap expectations on yourself or your child, because that would be incongruent with what is the reality. Try your best, get support, lean on the teacher in the class, for sure.
Right.
And let it be a learning process. It's going to be hard for a 4-year-old to focus at home.
And he's never been to full-time school before.
Oh, okay.
So this will be his first 5-day a week, full day.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting transition.
For both of you.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be calm and conscious, Leslie.
Yes. Calm and conscious is going to be my theme.
Now that you mentioned it, yeah. Aside from managing your expectations, I would say, like, work on that self-regulation, both for you and for him. And because he's 4, like, I really wouldn't stress the material and the content to a degree that would add any extra pressure than you need.
Yeah. And it's a dual language program. Spanish.
Spanish.
So I'll let you know how it goes, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. From my ignorant perspective, I'm not a teacher. There have been studies, though, they say that kids by the age of 6 generally, they kind of level off in terms of what's the recommended academic curriculum is. So there's a lot of I've had people coach me that don't worry about like, oh, they can't read by the age of like 4.5, or like
Yeah.
a lot of people stress those things, and that advice has given me permission to emphasize curiosity, exploration, discovery, nonlinear thinking, and just
Absolutely.
creativity.
Yeah. A lot of parents can hit the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s pretty hard because it gives them something concrete to a metric of success. Like, does my kid know this? And I want to measure up. And I'd back up what Arvin's saying, and to really understand the importance of those intangibles in terms of development of the child. And lastly, I would say have fun. Like, if learning can't be fun, like, I feel very sad for a lot of kids who go to school and the fun gets sucked out of learning. Because learning is super fun. Being curious is super fun. Learning things you didn't know before is really fun. But like, in a way, and unfortunately sometimes inside some public schools and schools in general, the emphasis can be on behavior control and obedience and like structure and accomplishment and meeting metrics. And that really can, if taken too far, can really suck the fun out of learning. My kid, I was like, I don't want to do this to him. I have 2 kids, but I was really focused on my first. I do this with my daughter too. But with my son, I was like, I want to make sure that he enjoys learning. Like, I don't want to like pressure him. I don't want to like get on top of him, because he was a late reader. And they wanted to put him like in this program. And I'm thinking, he's 6 years old. Like, please leave him alone. And do you know now he's read 50 books this year?
Wow.
Jeez Louise.
That's amazing.
He's 10, and I kept it fun. I was like, no, I'm not going to let people squash your fun. I'm not going to let it. So I protected that for him.
Yes.
And I did what Arvin was talking about, facilitated that curiosity and that fun. And this guy is on fire now. He's like self-propelled because it's fun.
Protect the fun. Protect the fun. I love that.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Like you said with the your approach to getting your kid to join you at the dinner table. What are they interested in? How can I capitalize on that and let them know that I'm meeting them at their interest, and then lead them?
Yeah. And it's like, imagine getting an invitation. Like, I invited one of you two to dinner at my home, and I'm like, hey, Leslie, you need to come to dinner at my home right now.
Take a bite.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of invitation?
That's true. Putting it in that perspective, you're like, something's not right about that.
What if I saw you on the street and I said, hey, Leslie, I would love for you to come to dinner tomorrow night. It's going to be really fun. I really hope you can make it. What do you say? Right? Like, just...
I'm down.
Yeah.
We're going to have fun. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. What we do is fun. Like, this invitation is open. Like, so much resistance can be avoided.
Friction, for sure.
So
can I get a turn? Can I get a turn?
Go for it.
Okay, what I'm struggling with right now is the truth. So Elijah's 4, and he understands that if he says different words, he can produce. If I ask him a question, he understands now what if he understands what I want to hear, and so sometimes he says what I want to hear, even though it's different from the truth. And so I've been racking my head on how do we encourage or motivate a 4-year-old to tell the truth when they know that the truth is going to have a consequence, or it's not going to be fruitful for them. It's not going to provide an advantage.
Yeah. Well, how did he get trained not to tell the truth?
Had probably from us, probably from the,
Right.
I mean, their sphere of like their world is currently us. So
Right.
I'm taking responsibility
Yeah.
that all whatever they're exuding comes from us.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe he learned lying from me.
Well, it makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, you already alluded to it, right? It makes sense that a child would not be open and not speak the truth if he's learned previously that when doing that, he gets blamed or shamed or some kind of negative consequence gets put on him.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's a straight line. That's an easy kind of thing to understand. So now the question is, now what do you do?
Well, before it used to be punishment, knee-jerk reaction, punishment, chastising, harsh words, harsh looks, and I taken a 180 in terms of how I want to frame the truth, because truth is really important to us.
Yeah.
So the way I've started to frame it, and it has become fruitful,
Okay.
is first of all, he's telling the truth more often than not. Well, that'll be second. First, I let him know that the truth is important because it means that mommy and daddy can trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak the truth, and also kind of a contractual agreement, tell us the truth, you will not be met with fury. Like we will appreciate the truth.
Right. That's a good philosophy or a good practice, right? Because you can see how it would be the child's preference not to tell the truth if they knew they're going to get in trouble. If we can empower children to understand that if and when they make mistakes, they have the ability to fix them. They have the ability to repair or to address. Then the mistake, instead of being punished, and that being the end of it, and you've left the child with like, oh, I'm just feeling bad, and then I guess I should try and do better because I'm a bad kid. What you're leaving, instead of that, what you teach is like, you're human, you make mistakes, that's acceptable, not always desirable, but you can fix it, we can address it, there's something we can do here. And that's really I found a way for kids to relax and be open and to be honest about making mistakes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because that could also make an impact later down the line, right? When they're teenagers and going through a lot of social issues in their school.
Yeah.
And them, it could impact them being as open to you and telling you the truth. And that's what scares me as a parent is, later down the road is them going through all the things that they go through in middle school, high school, bullying, and
drugs, sex, what else? Just academic stuff.
Yeah. I want to take one-to-one what you said about it was you alliterated some. It was like something means cooperation. It started with a C, but anyway,
connection governs cooperation.
Yes, I want to take that and apply it to this situation in that, hey, here the truth is beautiful because if you speak the truth, then we will have a stronger relationship and we'll be able to trust you more and you'll be able to do more things, and you'll have more freedoms. What do you think?
Yeah, that's hinting at, if you don't, we won't trust you and you won't have freedom. So it's kind of backhanded in a way in terms of like, from my perspective, and it's really easy to slip into this, man, like transitioning from authoritarian to just, even just assertive, or authoritarian to more authoritative. I caught myself so many times like slipping back into like, coerciveness. And so I just approach it from the standpoint that like, I try and understand what's going on for the kid. Like, hey, it looks like you're upset. Yeah, you're upset. Okay. That makes sense. You wanted this and you couldn't have it. Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so you're frustrated. Okay, take a deep breath with me. Okay, all right. Now, let's try and think of a solution. You wanted this. What's a good way? Do you know a good way that you could try and get that? And they're like, okay, I can ask for it. And because in that place, in that connected, open, non-judgmental place, you would be surprised at the intelligence that even a small child will display. Well,
Yes.
I can ask for it. I can ask. Oh, great! That's a great idea. How about you try and do that now? Let's practice it.
Yes. And it was only after I started providing that safe space in which we saw positive results. And like he would start to confess to stuff. Like someone would cry, I'd enter the room, and I'd say, "Oh, I noticed Alice is crying profusely. What happened?" And Elijah says, "I hit her on the head." And the first, what I'm trying to get into the habit of more and more before the fact, before I react, is first of all, thank you for telling us the truth. I really appreciate that. And then, and some sort of like going into role playing, like, so what do you think would be the right thing to do? How do we make sure she's okay? And then try to get the ideas from him.
Yeah. At the end of the day, what you're doing when you do that is you're trusting in the inherent goodness of the kid and that he wants to do well. And there's been some kind of glitch. Like, he's not a bad person who bonks people on the head and needs to be controlled and put away. Like, what we're doing is we're taking the leap of faith to understand that this kid is actually good inside. Something's gone off here. He doesn't quite have a skill yet. He made an error in judgment. Okay, well, he's 4. Okay, makes sense. You know, how can I teach him to get what he wants in a pro-social way? That's the leap of faith. This kid's good, and he can learn to be pro-social. That's the big leap of faith in parenting. And so long as we can, you know, stick to that and believe in that, there are ways to address what we call misbehavior without using, you know, coercion and nastiness.
Yes.
It's a tough leap of faith to make, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like I've learned so much today with you, Drew.
Yeah.
Well, what are you're not the hook though, Drew? What are you? What are you? You're a parent coach, but what do you have struggles? What are you going through?
Oh, come on, guys! Like, I told you, I live this. I live the direct experience, and the reason why I can speak so, you know, intimately to these challenges is because I've made every mistake there is to make, and I live them, and I feel them, and I think about them, and I rework it, and I revisit and I reevaluate, and I'm a work in progress. Having said that, my home now is so much more peaceful and enjoyable than it was in the past. I could speak to that. Now, currently, what challenges me? I'm noticing that my kids don't have the freedoms that I had when I was young. I feel like kids today, my kids, are overprotected. And I don't think that bodes well for like full independence, autonomy, and just resilience. I'm noticing that, like, you know, it's anecdotal, but my kid's life's much different than mine. I was out and about riding my bike, you know, all over the place. And not that all that was perfect, but I am noticing that there's a concern of mine that, like, you know, the facilitating of independence seems like a societal challenge at this point. And I would put myself in that group. Like, what do I need to do here? What's, you know, because at the end of the day, when my kids leave home, I want them to be empowered and independent and resilient and confident. And they can't get that if you don't actually facilitate it and allow for it and allow them to experiment with it. You can't get it in the living room. You can't get it playing iPad all day.
Yeah.
You can't get it. So we gotta, let kids have those experiences, and you gotta let them get hurt, and you gotta let them be disappointed and even be scared. And it's tough. So I'm challenged by that.
Yeah, letting them get hurt.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Because gentle parenting or calm and conscious parenting is not about protecting your child at all costs. The conscious part of that would say, no, that's not what it is. That becomes more about the parent then, because the parent doesn't want to see the child get hurt.
Of course, it's a natural instinct to, and that's sort of an insular theme with some of the grandparents as well. Insulate them at all costs.
Yeah.
And
I think it's also because it's not their kid, right? So if anything happens, that's on their butt.
Yeah.
That's true.
So we've gone through punishment. We've gone through the truth, a lot of your foundational stuff. What else do you think is of value to bubble up, to bring up and discuss, Drew?
Okay, let me think. Yeah, exactly. Self-regulation of the parent is the cornerstone. Self-awareness and self-regulation of the parent is the cornerstone of parenting. That's it. If you can't control yourself and regulate yourself, you can't lead by example. Your kids can't actually learn from you in meaningful ways. You can't have interactions that are positive. Things will devolve into conflict and hurt. So I'll drive that one home one more time.
Can you share just some quick tactics on how do you self-regulate?
Well, I took a deep breath there.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, breath is like the basic unit of self-regulation. If you can breathe consciously, and a lot of people don't, a lot of people walk around with conditioned nervous systems that are a little tightly wound, and we're breathing into our upper chest shallowly. That is not a way to become really self-regulated and grounded. Breathing into the belly, breathing deep into the belly. Most people don't even know. I'm doing it right now. So that means that when you breathe in through your nose, you're sending air all the way down to the belly, and the belly is expanding when you breathe in.
It kind of reminds me of yoga. I mean, just, that deep breathing.
It is. It's almost exactly that. And there is a breath in yoga called Ujjayi breath, which that was so helpful for me. Very similar to what I'm talking about. But the idea is that if you can control your breath, you can control your physiology. And your physiology feeds into your thinking and your emotions. Because we're mammals, we're humans, we have bodies. And if you really can breathe consciously, deep belly breaths, there's stuff called box breathing. There's a lot of breathing exercises on YouTube. But if you can make that a practice, then the wisdom is that if you can control your breath, you can control your life. If you can control your breath, you can create space. And it's that space that's so important, especially the space between stimulus and response. My kid hits me. If I've been practicing breathing and if I've been practicing regulating, it's going to give me just enough time, just enough awareness, just enough calm so I can go, okay, I can think with my big person brain instead of react with my hind brain and send myself into fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
and have like some kind of big overdone aggressive reaction. So breathing, yoga, meditation, obviously diet is huge.
Really? How so?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just give an example from my life. If you're already an anxious person and you're kind of high strung, and you should know this by looking at your body, right? Do you move quickly? Do you talk quickly? Do you talk in a high pitched way? Are you hyper vigilant? Are your eyes looking around? How is your sleep doing? Do you sleep really well and rested? Okay, so let's be honest. Maybe you're high strung. Maybe you have some anxious behaviors.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Maybe your nervous system is kind of on edge.
Right.
And so what was the question again? I forget.
How is diet? How does that
Right.
impact?
So do I need to have 2 or 3 cups of coffee when my nervous system is already on the edge?
Mm-hmm.
Do I? Really?
No.
No.
I was just
No. Like, I don't. And in fact, I have coffee sometimes now, but back then I can tell you having a cup of coffee already in this agitated, anxious state would just put me right close to that edge, and it would not take much. So you got to watch what you put in your body. Obviously, there's a bunch, vegetables, and I'm not a nutritionist, but there are healthier ways of eating that can address, that counter the effects of stress and anxiety, and you can look that up too.
Yeah. I think it applies to kids too. With what they're intaking. I mean, it's input output, right?
Oh,
So,
great point.
Oh, yeah.
sugar,
Great
you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
That's a really great point. There's a lot of parents out there, and this is not my wheelhouse of knowledge. I'm more like the self-regulation parent side, leading by example side. But yes, great point. The diet for the kid is really going to affect their behavior. And truth be told, like if your child's behavior is generally more regulated, it's going to be easier to deal with them and to keep your own cool.
And another thing is I guess we're talking about parents, but for the kid side, emotional regulation, sleep for the kids, for my kids is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And we talk about that all the time, of helping them understand. I noticed you're grumpy today. Do you think it has anything to do with you deciding to not take a nap today? I don't even know if that's like the appropriate question, but there's a correlation. Yeah.
Sleep is huge. So, routine. Kids love, they're not going to tell you they love it. They thrive in predictability and consistency, and routine is part of that. And so sleep routine is really big. Sleep schedule is really big. We all know, I mean, I think almost every parent knows what a sleep-deprived young child can act like, completely dysregulated, really hard to reason with, really hard to deal with, not happy, doesn't feel good. So sleep is really big. Thanks for bringing that up. And that was hard for me because I'm not really great at structure. But the kids needed it, so I had to rise to the challenge. I had to get a routine going. I had to work with them so that they felt good and safe at bedtime and felt like going to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go ahead, Leslie?
Go ahead.
Okay.
But I know, Drew, you said you had to run soon, but would love any final thoughts from you. But go ahead.
If you're having a hard time controlling yourself as a parent and or seeing your child in a positive light, I understand. I understand what that's like. It can be frustrating, especially if you want to create something different. And if you have higher hopes and expectations for yourself and your family, and you might be kind of stuck in the muck, and you might be struggling, and it's hard. Parenting is hard. I was not prepared for it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. It has pushed me to grow like nothing else has. And so you have a challenge. Yes, you do. You also have an opportunity.
Mhm.
That's the two sides of the coin. Big challenge, big opportunity for growth. And you can approach it like an opportunity. You can get help, you can get support, you can learn, you can grow, and you can be successful in this skill, just like you've learned to do other things in your life. This is a learnable, achievable skill. And what it takes is the decision to say, you know what, things aren't going the way that I want, and I want them to be different, and I might need some help. That's the thing. And if you do that, that's half the game. But as parents, we can say, we can be blind to that and say, no, I should know how to do this. You know, I don't need any coaching on this. This is my kid. This is my thing. And we can get, the ego can start driving, you know, the ship, and we can forget that this is a skill that can and should be learned.
Absolutely. That's encouraging, especially in, I imagine, for parents in challenging situations, there's hope. It's that initial decision, the realization.
Yeah, there's absolutely hope. Make yourself available, open yourself up, make yourself a little bit vulnerable, humble yourself, and you will reap the benefits, just like you did in any other area of your life where you decided that, you know what, I need to learn this. I'm a bit of a beginner. Nobody ever learned parenting. Where did anybody ever learn parenting?
Yeah.
No, we should.
We're all learning as we go.
Absolutely. So lastly, Drew, if for anyone who wants to know more about you, your ideas, your offering, where do you want to point them to?
Yeah, two places. They can go to my website, drewtupper.com. There is a blog there where I've kind of bared my soul and shared my opinions of my journey, and that's been helpful for a lot of people. And my Facebook page is a good place too. So that's facebook.com/Drew Tupper. And I'm willing and open to help people that are ready and want the help.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you.
We wish we could just talk with you all day.
Yeah.
We know we all have to get back to our lives, but this has been just so wonderful and valuable. And we hope that all the parents that are listening today and on our podcast, and you know, it'll live on, can get some really informative information from this episode. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Appreciate that.
You too.
Of course. All right. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. That was awesome.
I know. I've taken like a lot of notes here. But yeah, hopefully we can have him back on and maybe get an introduction to his kids and see the results of the fruits of the practice. Yeah,
for sure. But so I guess thank you to everybody for listening today. We would love to feature you if you have any interesting stories, or if you have something that you want to share that's relevant in our community and society or with parenting today. We'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to us. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, or email us at hello@eliandalliebaby.com. But thank you again, everybody, for listening today. And Arvind, do you have any final thoughts, final words?
No, what a beautiful conversation.
It was.
That's it. That's all I got. All right. See you, everybody.
All right. We'll see y'all next time.